The SS Valhalla had seen better days. Once a proud cargo ship, it now drifted through the murky waters of the North Atlantic, its hull riddled with rust and memories. The crew, a motley group of 7, was aware of the ship's decline but needed the paycheck, their hopes tethered to the promise of smooth sailing ahead. Captain Ellis was a hardened man, his weathered face reflecting years at sea. He had heard the whispers old sailors talking about a ghost ship that roamed the waters, but he dismissed it as folklore, remnants of superstition. As night descended, the ship creaked ominously, the sounds echoing in the hollow belly of the vessel. The first night passed uneventfully, but the second brought an unsettling chill. First mate Jenna noticed a shift in the crew's demeanor. Eyes darted, conversations hushed. During the night watch, she stood at the helm, scanning the horizon. A shadow flickered in the distance, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She shook it off, just her imagination. By the third day, strange occurrences began to unravel the crew's fragile nerves. Tools went missing, and whispers seemed to echo in the corridors. One morning, the cook, an older man named Hank, swore he had seen a figure standing at the stern, staring into the abyss. But when the crew rushed to look, there was nothing but the relentless waves. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a dense fog enveloped the ship. Visibility plummeted, and the eerie silence was punctuated only by the occasional creak of the hull. Jenna felt a nagging sensation. They were being watched. She chalked it up to fatigue, but the unease was palpable. On the fourth night, the fog thickened, and the temperature plummeted. The crew huddled in the mess hall, sharing uneasy glances. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the cargo hold. "What was that?" shouted Ellis, his voice a mixture of authority and concern. They descended into the hold, flashlights cutting through the gloom. The air was cold and stagnant. In the far corner, a stack of crates had toppled over, revealing a door they had never noticed before. It was an old access point, bolted shut but now hanging ajar. "Who opened this?" Jenna asked, her heart racing. Nobody had an answer. With hesitation, they pushed the door open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Alice led the way, flashlight beam trembling as it illuminated the walls, which were damp and covered in strange markings. They could hear the faint sound of water dripping, punctuated by a low hum that seemed to resonate from the very heart of the ship. As they reached the bottom, a vast chamber opened up before them, filled with old, forgotten cargo. But there was something else, shapes in the shadows that seemed to shift and writhe. The crew stood frozen, their breaths shallow, the air thick with a palpable dread. Hank was the first to break the silence, his voice trembling. "This is where they keep the lost." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The crew exchanged nervous glances, realizing they were not alone. Suddenly, one of the shapes lurched forward, revealing a gaunt figure draped in tattered rags, its eyes hollow and searching. The crew backed away, but there was nowhere to go. More figures emerged from the shadows, their movements jerky and unnatural, as if they were trapped in some endless torment. The crew's panic surged. They stumbled back toward the stairs, but Jenna's foot caught on something slick. She fell, her flashlight rolling away, illuminating a macabre scene of decayed faces etched in despair. The figures closed in, whispering in a language they couldn't comprehend, their voices a chorus of anguish. Get out! Get out!" Ellis shouted, scrambling to help Jenna up. But the figures were relentless, their hands reaching for the living, their whispers growing louder, drowning out reason. The crew sprinted back to the upper deck, gasping for breath. As they emerged into the foggy night, the ship groaned around them, as if it were alive, harboring secrets best left buried. But the figures were not far behind, their mournful cries echoing in the night. One by one, crew members began to disappear into the mist, drawn by the spectral figures. Jenna and Ellis huddled together, knowing they had to escape. But the fog closed in tighter, swallowing the ship and its crew in a shroud of despair. In the end, the SS Valhalla drifted on, lost among the waves, with no one left to hear its secrets. The ghostly figures remained, trapped in their eternal vigil, waiting for the next crew to uncover the forgotten depths. And as the sun rose over the horizon, the sea claimed another story, forever etched in its depths. The cargo ship Isabella creaked and groaned as it sliced through the heavy fog enveloping the coast. A skeleton crew of 5 worked the night shift, their faces illuminated by the dim light of the deck lamps. It was a routine journey: load up, sail south, drop off supplies. But tonight, the air was thick with an unsettling tension that none of them could shake. First Mate Leo leaned against the railing, staring into the abyss of fog. He was the last to take a shift, his thoughts drifting to his wife and their newborn son. Just then, the radio crackled to life, breaking the stillness. "Isabella, come in." Leo grabbed the receiver. "This is Isabella. We read you loud and clear," static hissed, followed by an unsettling silence. Just as Leo was about to respond again, he heard a soft whisper carried on the wind, almost as if the sea itself was trying to speak. He shook his head, dismissing it as fatigue. In the cramped galley, the cook, Anita, prepared a late-night meal. The rhythmic chopping of vegetables echoed in the otherwise quiet ship. But then, she stopped, her knife hovering above the cutting board. The air felt charged, as if someone were watching her. She turned, but there was no one, just the empty, shadowy corners of the galley. Shaking off the feeling, she returned to her task, though a chill crept up her spine. At the stern, the engineer, Tom, was busy checking the engines. The familiar hum of machinery was comforting until it cut out abruptly, plunging him into an eerie stillness. He cursed under his breath and flipped switches, but nothing happened. Just as he was about to head back to the control room, he heard a faint tapping, like fingernails scraping against metal. He froze, straining to hear. It was coming from the access hatch. "Hello," he called, his voice shaky. No answer. The tapping stopped. Heart racing, Tom made his way back, the hairs on his neck standing on end. As the night wore on, strange occurrences multiplied. Lights flickered, and crew members reported fleeting shadows darting just beyond their line of sight. Leo, now on edge, gathered the crew in the control room. "Has anyone else felt something off tonight?" Anita nodded. "I thought I heard someone whispering earlier, but I figured it was just my imagination." Tom frowned. The engines went dead for a minute. "I heard tapping, too. It felt wrong." They exchanged nervous glances, the weight of their fears pressing down on them. Leo decided it was best to check the cargo hold. It was the source of their load, and something felt inexplicably wrong about it. Descending into the hold, the air grew cold, and an oppressive silence enveloped them. Their footsteps echoed, amplified by the emptiness. Rows of crates loomed like tombstones in the dim light. They split up to search, each feeling a creeping dread. Anita found herself by a large, unmarked crate. It was warm to the touch, almost pulsating. She glanced around, feeling exposed. With a deep breath, she pried it open. The lid creaked, and the stench that wafted out made her gag. Inside, there were bodies. Not just dead, but grotesquely twisted, their eyes wide in eternal terror. Screaming, she stumbled back, and the others rushed to her side. They gathered around the crate, horrified, the gruesome sight freezing them in place. Leo's heart raced as he ordered everyone to back away. "We need to call the Coast Guard, get off this ship." But as they turned, the lights flickered violently, plunging them into darkness. Panic erupted, the crew stumbled, trying to regain their bearings. A low growl echoed through the hold, resonating deep within their chests. Then the whispers returned, louder this time, unintelligible, frantic. The shadows around them thickened, coalescing into forms that drifted closer. Tom shouted, "Get to the deck, now." They sprinted, the echoing whispers turning into cries. As they reached the ladder, something brushed past Leo, a cold hand against his arm. He recoiled, turning to see nothing but darkness. They scrambled up, adrenaline fueling their escape. But on deck, the fog had thickened, swallowing the ship whole. The horizon was a blank slate, and the faint outlines of other vessels loomed in the distance, ghostly ships that had long since vanished from charts. They realized too late, Isabella was not just a ship. It was a prison, trapped in a cycle of despair. As the crew gathered at the rail, the cries transformed into laughter, echoing around them. One by one, they felt themselves slipping away, pulled into the shadows. By dawn, the Isabella would be just another ship lost to the fog, her story a whispered warning to those who dared venture too close. The ocean, ever hungry, would keep its secrets buried deep until the next unsuspecting crew sailed into the echoing silence. The MV Theo was a freighter that had seen better days. Her hull, weathered and rusted, cut through the choppy waters of the North Atlantic with a groan. It was late autumn, and the crew was small, a skeleton team brought together by necessity rather than camaraderie. They were tasked with a last-minute run, transporting cargo from Iceland to the mainland. As the ship rocked gently, Martin, the first mate, stood on the deck, watching the waves splash against the sides. The sky, a sullen gray, threatened rain. Below deck, the hum of the engine was a constant reminder of their isolation. A few crew members chatted in low tones, but an uneasy tension hung in the air. On the third day of the voyage, a storm brewed on the horizon. It rolled in quickly, dark clouds swallowing the light. Captain Harris ordered everyone to their stations. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, but unease gnawed at Martin's gut. It felt like the ship was a living thing, aware of the chaos about to descend. As the storm hit, the Althea pitched and yawed violently. Rain lashed against the portholes, and the wind howled like a wounded animal. Martin struggled to keep his footing as he helped secure the cargo. A sudden jolt sent him sprawling, and he caught a glimpse of something in the water, a pale, fleeting shape beneath the waves. The storm raged for hours, water pooled on the deck, and thunder cracked like a whip. When it finally began to subside, the crew emerged, shaken but relieved. The storm had left its mark, the ship had sustained minor damage, but they were still afloat. That night, as they gathered for a meager meal, a chilling discovery was made. One of the crew, a quiet man named Raj, was missing. The others exchanged worried glances, recounting the last time they had seen him. He had been securing lines on deck. The captain, concerned but practical, ordered a search of the ship. They called for him, their voices echoing in the empty corridors, but the only answer was the creaking of the ship. Hours passed with no sign of Raj. Tension rose among the crew. They took shifts patrolling the ship, but the feeling of unease deepened. Martin, unable to shake the feeling that something was very wrong, returned to the deck, hoping for fresh air. The night was still and eerie, the ocean stretching endlessly beneath a shrouded moon. As he leaned against the railing, he saw it again, a pale shape just beneath the surface, gliding effortlessly through the water. Heart racing, he strained to see. Was it an illusion? He turned to call for the others but hesitated. The ocean had a strange allure, a whispering call that tugged at his consciousness. The next morning, the crew gathered in the mess hall, but Raj was still absent. They decided to split up and search the ship more thoroughly. As they searched, strange occurrences began to mount. Equipment malfunctioned without reason, shadows flickered in the corners of their eyes. It felt as though the ship itself was alive, watching them. Hours turned into days, and the atmosphere on the Althea grew increasingly paranoid. The crew began to turn on one another, accusations flying like daggers. Each night, Martin heard whispers that seemed to float through the air, calling him by name. They spoke of deep waters and lost souls, of a ship that was cursed to sail forever. One night, as the crew huddled together in the mess, the lights flickered and went out. Panic set in. In the dark, they could hear the sound of something splashing against the hull. And then, a chilling scream pierced the silence. It was one of the crew, Tom, who had gone to check on the engine room. They rushed toward the sound, but when they reached him, he was staring out into the darkness, eyes wide with terror. "It's coming for us," he screamed, pointing overboard. They peered into the inky blackness, and there it was, a figure rising from the depths, a ghostly silhouette gliding toward the ship. In a frenzy, the crew scrambled to the lifeboats, but the ship began to shake violently. The water surged and roiled as if something massive was beneath them. Martin felt the pull of the sea, an overwhelming urge to surrender, to join whatever was calling from below. As the ship tilted, one by one, the crew fell into the churning water, consumed by darkness. Only Martin clung to the railing, fighting against the compulsion to let go. The last thing he saw was the figure surfacing, a pale face, eyes wide and mournful, reaching out to him as he succumbed to the abyss. The MV Althea drifted, empty and silent, a ghost ship in the unforgiving sea, lost among the waves. And as night fell, the water calmed, hiding its secrets beneath the tranquil surface, waiting for the next unfortunate souls to answer its call. Alright everyone, that brings us to the end of our story. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you have similar stories you'd like to share with us, feel free to reach out. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.